It had been a very busy week, and by that Friday evening I was dying for a decent pint of beer. I slipped into the pub for a drink before heading home from work. The Farmer's Arms pub was right next door to the office, and I'll happily admit that it wasn't unusual for me to pop in for a quick lunch on the way home. Hey, they also served damn good steak, so I would often grab a bite there when my wife Beatrice was out on business in the evening or visiting her in-laws. If I could, I tried to avoid traveling with her to visit her parents. They were never members of my fan club. The second best thing they ever did for me was retire to the South Coast. Of course, I always thought that the best thing they did was manage to produce Beatrice in the first place. To be honest, probably my only real gripe with the scoundrels was the fact that when they left, they didn't take Beatrice's brother Bernie with them. Long time no see, Doug. Again, like a squirrel in a wheel. George, the owner of Farmer's Arms, commented with a grin as he examined my pint for a couple of seconds to make sure it was up to the expected standard before placing it on the bar in front of me. Busy week, George. He was running around in the foam like crazy. Yes, I really believe it. Who was it, the redhead or the little blonde? George asked with a wink. George, I'm a married man, and I don't do this with young professionals in the office, you know. Oh, who will believe it? Those girls at that party they had last week made it very clear that all you have to do is say the word. Hey, Betty, George's barmaid, did you hear that new, that married chick with the big boobs? So Betty said she heard her tell those other two that she would jump on you, and all you had to do was nod at her. George, please stop. Have you ever seen me behave inappropriately with any of the office girls? No, Doug. I can't say that I saw it. But then again, there are times when I don't see you for a week or so, not even at lunch. Who knows who you're with or where you're taking them? Stop it, George. I told you, I am a married man. That doesn't stop a lot of my clients from going wild, and some don't. And I don't know who's worse, married guys or married birds. Once they have one or two children behind them, some women simply spiral out of control. Change the subject, damn it, George. I didn't really come here tonight to discuss modern attitudes toward fidelity in marriage. Come on, he said with disbelief in his voice. I just thought that a guy with your obvious magnetism for the opposite sex should be an expert on this matter. George grinned again. Well, I'm not an expert. Unfortunately, I am a person with high moral principles. Although I admit that we do have some damn good examples in the office at the moment. I replied, and winked back at George. Okay, I wouldn't walk up to any of the girls in the office and shoot a gun. But George or anyone else doesn't need to know that I'm such a good girl. God, he'd probably interpret that as me being henpecked or something. There is a fine line that all married men walk to maintain their social status with the guys in the pub. You never say that you do, but again, you leave all the guys with the impression that you could do if the mood was right. Or perhaps you even do it, but keep it strictly to yourself. Sorry, girls, it's all because of the stupid male ego. So where did I stop? Oh yes, I just asked George to change the subject. Where have you been lately, Doug? You haven't been here since last Friday. We've almost gotten to the point of renting out your chair. Been very busy, George. New contract. I'm afraid this is all a little secret and I can't say more about it. But if it all works out, I'll get a hell of a bonus and no doubt a promotion or two. Well done, Doug. By the way, I wasn't the only one who missed you. Betty asked if I had seen you. Do you know that your brother-in-law has been looking for you almost every evening this week? He seems to be in a real panic. He wants to find you so bad. Bullshit. What does he want? I don't know. He didn't say. But you've been coming here and running away, pestering Betty and me to find out where you are for most of the damn week. The little bastard didn't even stick around to buy a drink. George wasn't too fond of my brother-in-law either. But on the other hand, Bernie was almost always short of cash, and he could very rarely afford to buy a drink, even when he went to the pub. Bloody short of cash, I guess, and his bookie's probably after him again. Yeah, I bet he lost all his damn cabbage in the race. Stupid ass. He's scared as hell to walk around the house and ask Beatrice for a loan. She'll bite his fucking ears off. George and I smiled at each other. He didn't need to say anything. George had heard Beatrice scold Bernie many times in the past for his gambling. Actually, my brother-in-law Bernie wasn't a bad guy at all, just a little too slow to mature, in my opinion, and a little too attached to his sister. He was also quite boring to talk to, unless it was about racing or dogs. For some reason, possibly gambling, Bernie was never able to find a woman. Well, they never stayed here long anyway. So, as you might have guessed, he was never married and therefore spent too much time at our house for my liking, driving me crazy. Okay, maybe Bernie never found a woman to latch on to because, aside from his gambling habits, he was a mama's boy. And since his mother moved to the South Coast, Beatrice seems to have become his surrogate mother. Most women don't like playing second fiddle to the man in their mother's life. Luckily, by that time, I hadn't seen the bastard too often. About a year earlier, Bernie, having tried almost every dead-end job within a 20-mile radius, had taken advantage of a local bus company's driver training program and became a bus driver. Whether he liked the job or not, he was locked into a 3-year contract, and the scoundrels could give him any terrible shift they wanted. To be honest, I kind of felt sorry for the bastard. Driving company buses all damn day and interacting with the charming British public is not my idea of a good time. I work to live and prefer to at least not dislike my daily tasks. I had been in the farmer's arms for about 15 or 20 minutes when Bernie burst through the door. Yes, I did say burst. He trotted through the door and, barely noticing me, headed straight for my perch. Now, I'm not too slow. From the moment the door slammed open and I saw Bernie standing there, breathing heavily, as he almost always did, dragging his entire weight behind him, I knew there was something burning in his ass. The problem was that, for some unknown reason, I was a little doubtful that it had anything to do with yesterday's curry because it wasn't heading into the push. He rushed across the bar in my direction. At this point in the game, Bernie's unnecessary bulk wasn't doing him any favors. Like those big, heavy American cars with their unstable suspension, there wasn't much chance for the Bernie to change direction without resulting in a heap. I slid out of my chair and took a couple of steps away from the bar before Bernie plopped down into the empty seat with a crash. He then collapsed on the floor on top of a small pile of wood that had once been a bar stool and tried to figure out what had just happened. I think I already said that Bernie is not very quick to figure things out. Deciding now was the right time, I leaned over, grabbed Bernie by the arm, and rolled him over onto his back. Then, throwing my leg over his body, I rested my ass on his chest, wrapping both his arms with my legs, and looked down at his purple face. Bernie, as I understand it, was very angry about something. "What the hell is your problem, dude?" I demanded. You asshole! How could you do this to my sister?" "How could I do what, Bernie? I have no idea what you're talking about." "Hey, asshole, I want you to get out of here before I call old Bill the police." George's voice came from somewhere over my shoulder. I went into conciliatory mode. I liked Farmer's Arms, and whether I liked Bernie or not, sometimes I had to bring the bastard here for a drink. You know, on his birthday and stuff like that. "Wait, George, I'm sure this is just a stupid misunderstanding. Now, Bernie, if I let you go, can we talk about this like grown men, or do you want to finish on your ass again?" "I've calmed down," Bernie assured me. It took the combined efforts of George and me to get Bernie back on his feet. "Okay, Bernie, what's eating you?" I asked, ordering him a pint of beer. "What, are you stupid or something? You think I don't know what you do on your lunch breaks? 3 fucking times this week. Like most people who knew him, I was used to Bernie talking complete nonsense half the time. But sometimes there was an element of logic in what he said, except when it came to the fact that some 3-legged horse was about to win at Newmarket at 2 o'clock. So I decided it was probably best for me to hook him up and let him run around a bit to find out exactly what he thought he knew. "Bernie, you say a lot of words, but as usual, not a damn thing is clear. Now start from the beginning and tell the whole story slowly so that even George can understand." I can't tell you what look came across George's face when he heard that, because I was looking at Bernie. "I was on the 22nd this week," Bernie announced triumphantly. From this statement, I deduced that Bernie had been driving the number 22 bus all week, and I mentioned this fact to George. None of us saw any meaning in this statement. "And that should tell us something?" I asked. "Well, number 22 passes by the big supermarket on the outskirts of town, doesn't it?" "You tell us, Bernie. But I haven't taken the bus for years, and I doubt George does. Maybe you should be a little more—" "Oh, damn it! It's common knowledge that everyone with a dirty little connection parks their car in the parking lot of this supermarket," Bernie exploded. I looked at George, and he looked back at me, equally confused by Bernie's abrupt statement. It must have suddenly occurred to Bernie how stupid his words sounded. "No, I don't mean that everyone who parks their car in a supermarket parking lot is having an affair. I mean, so is everyone who parks their car on the side of the road next to the road. They park there and then sneak into the motel next door for a couple of hours of frolic." "And what does this mean in connection with your entering my bar this evening?" George asked. "Well, Doug's car was parked right in the corner of that parking lot, off the road, for all 3 damn lunches this week. And she was still standing there on my way back after I stopped for lunch. It's more than 3 hours after that." "Wow," George replied before I could think of anything. "And Doug here always claims that he is such an honest and moral person. Did you happen to tell your sister Beatrice about your suspicions?" "There is no suspicion about this, George. Except on Fridays and Saturdays, this parking lot is half empty, and from there, it's a damn long walk to the store entrance. Only a complete idiot would bother to carry his purchases that far," Bernie answered again in a triumphant tone. "In any case, it is common knowledge that Don Juans park their cars so that they will not be seen in the hotel parking lot. He's right about that, Doug. You really should be more careful." George turned to me, but before I could say anything in response, he turned back to Bernie. "But you didn't answer, Bernie. Have you already told Beatrice about your suspicions?" "Oh, no. I decided that I would talk to Doug and persuade him to end this affair," Bernie replied. "Sorry, Bernie, but I'm afraid that this is impossible for me," I said, and then downed the rest of my pint. "George, please pass the phone here." George complied with my request without comment, and I pushed the device towards Bernie. "I'll tell you what, Bernie. Before I get home, you have maybe half an hour to 45 minutes to call Beatrice and tell her everything you just told us." "Do you want me to tell her?" he asked with a shocked expression on his face. "Certainly. No relationship can last long when one of the parties behaves the way you expect." I winked at George. "Oh, and Bernie, since you're doing this, you might as well tell your sister to get all her crap out of my bedroom before I get there. And by the way, George, have you been asking where I've been all week? Well, on Monday morning I flew to Germany. Beatrice crashed her car last Sunday afternoon, so she's been using mine all week, while hers is being repaired. I then left the Farmer's Arms and went in search of a taxi. And of course, I began to wonder, who should I chat to first, the redhead or the little blonde? Or maybe even a newlywed bird with big boobs? No, this is, of course, a thought, but I simply do not believe in such behavior. Life goes on.